a missionary kid turned atheist, and I would say that I have somewhat complicated feelings about missionaries. So my parents specifically were missionaries to Muslims. Before elementary school, I was traveling the world with my parents. We lived in Pakistan for a few months before we could enter Afghanistan. We lived in Afghanistan for 2 years. We left just as the Taliban was taking over. No one was really sure at the time what this new group was going to do, so a lot of us thought that it may be a good thing. So leaving at that time was really just a precaution. There was a lot of footage from when I was a kid during that time, and I just remember being enthralled by a lot of it. I would watch those videos over and over again throughout elementary school and most of middle school. And there were several reasons. For one thing, Afghanistan from a young age was sort of like the second country to me. Like, I knew I didn't belong there, but it was something that was always going to be part of my history, so I was kind of fascinated by it. My dad would go to churches across the country talking about his experiences, talking about how Christians should talk to Muslims, talking about Afghan culture and our experiences there, etc., etc. So as far as my personal experiences with missionary work, I would say that most of it overall was positive at the time I experienced it. Obviously, I'm an atheist and I have wildly different perspectives now. But at the time, being a missionary was like being a hero. And that's how I looked at my family, and that's how I looked at other missionary families. Like, we were heroes. We were out there to save everybody. I'm sure the Muslims are so grateful for people like me. You're welcome. There were a few things that I didn't like. So for one thing, the speech my dad would give at all these churches was mostly the same thing. Every now and then he would change part of the speech for the type of church he was in front of or something that was relevant to that community or whatever. But for the most part, it was the same speech over and over and over and over and over again. And when we would go to these different churches, I wasn't allowed to go to the youth group. I would have to sit in the main congregation with them. And I felt like that was so unfair and restrictive to me. In hindsight, I think the main reason they did that was because, you know, we may be part of this church network, but we don't know what they're going to teach you if you go to this separate room. I think that was really the main reason, but good Lord, I got tired of that speech. Oh my God, it was so tiring. And also, at that point, I was starting to kind of interact occasionally with Muslim friends of my own without my parents around. So I did start to see that some of the things that were said were just a bit contradictory, and that was a bit conflicting for me. The other thing was, you know, we weren't just there to give speeches, we were there to raise funds for our work. So a lot of times the missionary families would be called to the front of the church and, you know, basically stand there to talk to people considering donating to them. A lot of times I would have to stand there with my parents. And I'm the type of person, I do not like being the center of attention at all. I hated it. I hated it. If there's anyone my heart bleeds for, it is the kids of celebrities and politicians and pastors and all of these kids who are just under intense microscopes that never has to be put in that position. All I had to do was occasionally stand at the front of the church, you know, a handful of times every couple of months. It's really not that bad, but in my mind, it was nauseating and I hated it. Plus, there were so many adults in churches, especially at that time, that would go up and just pinch your cheek like it was an okay thing to do, which I hated, but also say, oh, I knew you when you were a baby. Like, who cares, lady? Get out of my face and don't touch me. Anyways, all of that gets into a lot of weird church culture that I could be here forever criticizing. But the point is, at the time, most of the things that related to the missionary work I felt were very positive, I had very good feelings about. I felt like being a missionary was great. I feel like anyone who's a Christian should want to evangelize, and the best way to do that is to be a missionary. It also exposed me to a lot of debate and discussion about how to approach convincing someone to believe what you believe, and what your motivations are for doing that. Now, in the case of Christians, they believe that they are saving people's souls, which if you really believe that someone's going to burn forever if they don't follow your God, that's not a God you should willingly be serving. But anyways, why think when you can just have faith? Anyways, it's just very interesting to think back on those experiences and how at the time I thought very positively of them. And now I'm an atheist and have a totally different perspective. Now, if you have an opportunity to change somebody's mind about something that's really important to you, honestly, Christian or not, go for it. I think it's good to have dialogue. I think it's good to be exposed to ideas that you would not normally consider. or have not considered. But it's so different now being on the other side of that coin, where when someone finds out that I'm an atheist and they want to try to change my mind and the approaches that they take. For one thing, it's a lot different than a lot of the things that were taught in the 90s to missionaries in terms of how to approach this kind of work. But another thing I noticed is that missionaries will be a lot more sensitive to simple non-believers who have never heard the word than they will be to atheists who have outright already made a choice to reject Christianity. And those are very different dynamics, don't get me wrong. But at this point, I think for me the main thing is how much you're willing to interfere with someone's life or become controlling of them to try to change their mind. And that's where my issue comes with missionaries. I don't have a problem with you expressing your beliefs. I don't have a problem with you talking to them and trying to find opportunities to have these kind of conversations. It's when you get forceful about it. So here in the States, a lot of people will try to evangelize through some type of charity work. And I think that's so crappy. Like, if someone is coming to you because they don't have somewhere to live or they need money for food, and you take advantage of their attention to try to guilt shame them about something they're doing that you think is a sin, or to preach the Bible, or, scare them about hell, I can't stand that. I have no respect for it. It's so awful. The things the Bible teaches are objectively terrible. They're absolutely horrible. So it being called the good news is the most ironic phrase that exists, in my opinion. Now, if someone says something to you that's kind of an opening, whether you're involved in charity or not, I don't think it's wrong for you to take that. But I'm talking more about the people who will be forceful about it and try to make you talk about God, talk about religion, talk about your most deepest beliefs, taking advantage of their position that way. That's a very common tactic. Another thing I encounter as an atheist, I will occasionally try to engage and say, hey, let's have this conversation. But 95% of the time I do that and give someone the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, you want to have a conversation, let's do this. It boils down to them calling me an abomination, telling me something just absolutely horrible and hateful. And to them, they don't think it's hateful. They're like, I'm just telling you the truth, and that's what God wants me to do, so I'm doing it. I will very rarely humor those kind of conversations those days because of how many times it has devolved into something absolutely ridiculous and unacceptable. And that's the mentality of evangelicals and missionaries, and that's what they expect the world to look at as loving and God's kindness and God's goodness, and I can't take it seriously. It's a total joke to me. So I mentioned before that my family were missionaries to Muslims, and this is the part where we get into a very uncomfortable topic, and that topic is the subject of honor killings. Now, honor killings are not just done for leaving the Islamic faith. Sometimes it may be other behaviors that are perceived, to the Islamic faith at least, as being some type of affront to God. It is one thing to go to another country and try to spread God's word and do good without doing any harm. But to knowingly do harm to spread God's word, that's where I think you get into a bit of a moral dilemma, and a lot of missionaries don't want to admit this. Now, I make zero defense for anyone who participates in an honor killing. Zero defense. However, if you convert someone and you know, as a matter of fact, that converting them will put their life at risk, and you proceed to do it anyways, I do think that you bear some responsibility for that. I'm sorry. I really do. That doesn't make you, I guess, worse than the person who actually carries out the honor killing, but you intentionally put someone in danger. I don't understand how Christian missionaries in Muslim countries can live with themselves, can do that. How do you do that to someone? There were probably more honor killings related to my family than I know about, but there was one in particular. We ended up getting everyone out of the country except for the mom, and she was killed in an honor killing for leaving the Islamic faith. I think she was from either Afghanistan or Pakistan, I don't remember which. And not only did we help the rest of the family escape, We also helped them get somewhere. We helped them pack up and move, and find somewhere to get settled. So yeah, you can argue that my family did what we could to help, but we were still the reason that the mom was not the picture anymore. And that really was very destructive to me, and it really started to destroy this mentality in me of my family is a family of heroes, because missionaries are heroes. Missionaries are there to save people and to help people and to make the world a better place, and to just turn a blind eye on the fact that we contributed to putting these people in this situation where they were killed is just bizarre to me. I do not understand viewing that as a positive thing. And there was this particular moment that especially traumatized me when we were helping this family move. So this little girl, maybe like, I don't know, 3 or 4, I think I was around 7 years old at the time. This was a long time ago. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but probably old enough to know better. So it had already been explained to me that the mother was dead and why she was dead. And this little girl was saying something about how her mom was still coming home. And something in me felt the need to clarify. Something in me felt the need to just say, no, your mom's actually dead. Don't ask me why I did that. I don't know. It's on the one hand, like, I have to forgive myself because I was young at the time. I didn't really know any better. And she just starts marching around the room, chanting, "Mommy's alive, mommy's alive, mommy's alive," and just the looks on everyone's faces, because she was walking away from me and everyone knew that I had said something. I wanted to just sink into the ground and just not exist anymore. I was so mortified by that moment. Because it was really shortly after that where I really thought about what an honor killing was, and the fact that we had converted this woman away from Islam. That kind of made me feel like, okay, we're partially responsible for her death, right? How are we heroes in this situation? How are we the good guys? Now, on the flip side of that argument, anyone should be able to leave any faith that they want to, certainly without any fear for their life. So particularly now as an atheist, I was raised in a faith that I left. I denounced Christianity. I want nothing to do with it. I don't share those beliefs at all. Regardless of how I feel about missionary work, there's a lot of anger that is well-deserved towards people who participate in honor killings. The fact of the matter is, honor killings are still legal in some countries. In some countries, they are still a high threat, even if they are not illegal. So there really is quite a societal hold on people who will carry out honor killings. So when you get into this topic, it's not just about telling you this story or telling you that story. This happened on this day. There are so many aspects and nuance and so many deep dives you could do into the history of all this in order for it to really make sense. Because I feel like for someone like me sitting here in the United States, when's the last time I had to worry about something like an honor killing? It's such a literal foreign topic. And that makes me a bit unsure of how I want to approach the issue in terms of discussing it publicly. And as far as missionaries are concerned who insist on working in Islamic countries, for one thing, if you're arrested for being a Christian, I don't really feel sorry for you. Like, if you live in a country where Christianity is essentially outlawed and you're caught with the Bible and you go to jail, I think that's very unfortunate. I think religious freedom should be for everyone, and I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's right. But if you go from the United States to another country where practicing Christianity or trying to spread it is illegal, and you get caught, it's really hard for me to feel empathy for you. Like to a degree I might, sure, but at the same time, like, you did put yourself in that situation. So that's another aspect of missionary work that I have a really hard time wrapping my head around, because it's like, how should I feel sorry for you if you intentionally put yourself into this situation? I get that you feel that it's not fair. I get that you feel that it's not right. I get you feel that these things shouldn't be happening. And I'm with you, because religious freedom should be for all of us. But realistically, religious freedom does not exist in all places, and that's just the truth. So in conclusion, I guess I would say I just feel very conflicted on missionary work as an atheist today, because I have seen the positive sides of it. I've seen our family help people who wanted nothing to do with the message. I've watched our family help people who in their own way were trying to do the right thing. I've watched my family and people within the network go out of their way to help Muslims who are struggling financially or struggling in some other type of way, offer support. So I will say that even though I feel like the plot got lost and there were a lot of wrong things that were done, yes, I did see the attempt to help even people who were not open to the message. But at the end of the day, I've just seen too much of a willingness to spread a message, even when that message will cause harm. And to just put someone in a life-threatening situation and then just go back to your cozy little life in the United States and pat yourself on the back for a job well done is something that I find really repulsive. And it's something I don't support. So I cringe quite a bit whenever someone tells me that they're a missionary, because until I know more, I really don't know whether that's a good or bad thing. I don't like to assume the worst, because I feel like when you become an atheist and you look back on a lot of positive experiences and realize that they were actually bad things, and you realize that a lot of things you were taught that you once thought were good were actually very bad messages, it's so easy to look at all evangelicals and all missionaries and all churches as something just awful and bad. And I do feel like as an atheist it's important to get to a point where you are not getting like these just blanket condemnations of groups. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, half this video, or even just a quarter of this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe.